59, a 60, two lots of 54, and a lot of attention on men's pro golf this week. This is Golf Lovers United, where we discuss golf the fair way. My name is Mark, one of the hosts at Mr. Asquith on Twitter. And today, as always, I'm joined by my good friends Jay at Pro Golf Critic and Ben at Golf Lover UK. And we have got a heck of a lot to discuss. Not only are we going to give our picks for the upcoming week's tournaments, in particular, the LIV tournament over in Las Vegas, the weekend of the Super Bowl. It's going to be a big one, but we're going to analyze and deep dive that cracking weekend of golf, wind, and weather that we've just seen across men's golf. It's been a really, really interesting week. Of course, if you've been asleep, it was the season opener on LIV Golf, Mayakoba. We also had the AT&T at Pebble Beach, and an honourable shout out to the Bahrain Championship on the DP World Tour, which featured a really endearing win for someone that I think we all wanted to see back in the winner's circle. So we're going to dive deep into that in just a few minutes. Before we do that, a quick shout out to all of our supporters. It's really nice to see people supporting Golf Lovers United. It's really nice to see people joining the fan zone. And we need to give a big shout out to Tony Gentile, who joins us as a fan over at glugc.com/support. The fan zone is open to everyone, and you can get involved, like I said, at glugc.com/support. You can tell your friends they can find the show on YouTube or their podcast app of choice. So dig deep, enjoy it, leave some comments, have a little bit of fun with us wherever you get your podcasts or your entertainment. So without further ado, let me shut up, and I'm going to bring on the wonderful Ben, the wonderful Jay. Ben, how are you, my friend? You had a good weekend? You enjoyed the golf?
Yeah, I did enjoy the golf, and a happy birthday to Tony Gentile. It won't be when he's listening to this, but I believe his birthday is today because I was chatting to him on Messenger on Instagram. So happy birthday to Tony. I'm going to guess Tony is a youthful 16. He's not, but he might like that.
He would probably, I think we all like that. We're all very useful. I'm sure he's very youthful indeed. But yeah, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for joining us. It means a heck of a lot. And Jay, how are you, my friend? You doing all right?
Yeah, everything's good. Definitely dealing with a little bit of bad weather here in the Bay Area that definitely impacted Pebble Beach. We saw there was a lot of PJ pros that were making some bad weatherman content over there in the Monterey Peninsula when they couldn't play on Sunday. But yeah, navigating things pretty well. Everything going well though. No complaints.
Good, man. Well, it's been a busy weekend, hasn't it? We should probably get to that. The AT&T, we saw a 60, which we'll get to in a bit. So I'm going to go 60 with an asterisk just for you, Ben. So we'll get to that in just a minute. And we saw Ludwig Oberg. I need to get that pronunciation right. He was starting to make a bit of a move. So a little bit of boner contention there. Had it gone to Sunday, would Wyndham Clark have been able to protect his legacy even further by coming second? Who knows? We'll get to that in just a second. But also the LIV season opener where we saw a victory from Legion 13, which was actually, it was fantastic to see. Really, really enjoyed that. A lot to dig into there, and a fantastic win in an atmospheric playoff, of course, between Joaquin Niemann and the wonderful Sergio Garcia. So a heck of a lot to dig into on this one. But let's just spend a couple of minutes before we get to that. I just want to give a bit of a shout out to the DP World Tour. It gets a bit of a, it's like the awkward stepchild at the minute, isn't it? No one's really talking about it. But I watched it on Sunday. Stridham, there was Dylan Fratelli, a few people in contention on a course that Monty had designed in the middle of a desert, 10, 15 years ago. It was actually quite compelling golf. I don't know if you watched any, Ben J. I know you didn't spend much time with it. But Ben, did you spend much time with the DP World Tour this weekend?
I watched highlights, but one thing on the DP World Tour I'd love to talk about, just as a quick one, is that Marcel Siem, the German guy, I think a lot of people don't realise quite how old he is. Like, he has been around so long. He's late 40s. Yet another, I'm looking now, it's 20. I thought he finished 22nd, but I'm wrong, he's 23rd. Like, Marcel Siem has just been grinding on the European Tour, getting loads of top 20, top 10 finishes for maybe 20 odd years, 25 years. And it's actually, we had Scott Drummond on the show, didn't we, who talked about his performance in the 2004 Wentworth. Well, Marcel Siem played in that event. So, like, Marcel Siem's been on tour for a long time. And just, I think sometimes you do forget there are some absolute, journeyman's the wrong word, because journeyman implies that you haven't been great and you've moved around a bit. what would you call it? He's just been a stalwart of the tour, isn't he? I think sometimes some of these players get overlooked. And I quite like him. He's a bit different. He's got the long flowing locks, and he's sort of languid where the way he walks up to the ball. Yeah, I did watch it. There is a young guy. I can't remember his name though. The one thing the DP World Tour did annoy me this week is there's a young lad who won his card and still hasn't had a start. He's had to play 4 or 5 events on the Challenge Tour, so he still hasn't had a start despite winning his card. And I don't understand how that was happening. And I looked into it. I'm not going to get too political, but the reason he's not been getting into it and he missed out by 3 spaces this time is because the 5 players have been parachuted in from the PGA Tour that lost their card. So there were 5 players that got parachuted in from the PGA Tour onto the European Tour. That way, you've got one bloke who's qualified and isn't getting a spot because people who've been kicked off another tour are taking it. That to me feels really wrong. It's not a dig at the PGA Tour. That isn't at all. I'm just saying that's actually the PGA, the DP World Tour. You've got a young man who's earned his card. He's done what you wanted him to do. He's gone through Q School and earned it and not got a place. Oh, it doesn't sit right with me.
No, I get that. It's a funny situation. Like I grew up, obviously being over here in England, grew up watching the what was the European Tour back then, and it I know this feels a bit cliche, but it always felt a lot stronger then. When you had Westwood coming through, you had Poulter coming through, Rosie was coming through, but then you also had people like Monty still playing the tail end of Seve. Obviously, Bernard Langer was a massive stalwart on there, and it just it's wild because it almost felt more global back then than it does now, and it's like you said, it's sort of weird to see. Like, I never really considered the European Tour to be a weaker tour back in the day. It may well have been, and I may just not have had the information, the data, or the opinion to see that. But it always felt that Monty and Langer could go toe to toe with whoever, Duval and whoever else in that generation, and it is just increasingly starting to look like it's just a shame, isn't it? It's just looking like there's not much care and attention. Jay, I know you've got some thoughts on where that tour sits, but yeah, I don't know. Have I got that wrong? Is that like rose tinted glasses from like the 90s or what?
No, I think you have it completely right. I think that the European Tour of old, it certainly is. It is not that anymore, unfortunately, and part of it has to do with the decisions made by leadership and Keith Pelley. And honestly, this strategic alliance with the PGA Tour just is not panning out the way that anybody wants. I think that, and I think this is something people need to probably watch out for. 2.5 years ago, the European Tour had a chance to partner with the PIF, and that would have allowed access to the LIV players playing in European Tour events. Now, if you combine the LIV players with the European Tour players, you start, especially now, I think if you combine those two against the PGA Tour, I mean, you may be looking at a tour that's a little bit better than the PGA Tour. Like, I think that that's something that probably should have happened from the beginning. Unfortunately, we could talk about, the PGA Tour and how they've sort of threatened the DP World Tour and their sponsors if they didn't sort of side with them. Like, that definitely happened. So, I think that 2.5 years ago, the LIV was a totally unproven thing. They hadn't signed any players. It was a totally different ecosystem then than what it is now. So if you were to sort of reconfigure things and sort of align the European Tour with LIV and allow some of these great European champions to like go back and play in some of these events, like that would be, because one, you're able to get them access to world ranking points. 2, you're going to strengthen those fields so the number of points available is even more than what it is now. And 3, you wind up building up a competitor to the PGA Tour that's like actually on the same level. Like, that's where I think this whole thing needs to go. And I think that may be a world that we're living in the not too distant future. Like, I think this whole deal with the merger now is very, very tenuous. I think that's probably the most likely outcome of all this. But there isn't necessarily going to be a deal between the PJ Tour and PIF. I think PIF could go ahead and sort of take the European Tour, because we already saw in the paperwork, the PJ Tour described it as a distressed asset. So it's like you could easily spin that off to the PIF and sort of have them invest in it. And that seems like the most logical thing to me. And I think that it would strengthen the tour. It will allow a path back for some of these great champions, which is what I really want to see.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the people coming up, like the Hogard twins and so on, coming up through the DP World Tour as well, because the talent's clearly still there. And I think we're going to get to the fields in a second on the PGA Tour and LIV, because this week probably highlighted beyond all other weeks where men's professional golf is. But huge shout out to Dylan Fratelli just before we do that, because not won on the DP World Tour for 6 years. Last year, the guy was thinking about walking away. We've all wanted to throw our 7-iron around a tree from time to time, but this is a guy's living. It's a guy. Ben's done that, of course. He has. Probably when he threw the club championship away. For the long-term listeners, you'll get this. The emotions are rife. They're huge, but this is someone's career. It's someone's livelihood. So massive props on that one to Dylan Fratelli. Now we got to get to the fields. Then we've got to get to the fields. Jump in, Ben.
I want to put that name on that guy. So it's 18-year-old Englishman Josh Berry. Became the second youngest ever player to gain a DP World Tour card behind Rory McIlroy, and he hadn't had a chance to play yet because of the reasons we said. However, the good news is he has got his first start, and he will be playing Qatar this weekend. So great to see he's got it. But a question should be asked, he's 6 events in. Should he probably have been able to play this far, having won his card? I'd have thought so. But hey, he's in now, and he's going to get a chance. Hopefully he will take the most of that chance. He's 18 years old, and hopefully he's got a great career ahead of him. It was just a point just to say that didn't quite seem right to me. Go get your card, get it, and then get a start. Felt a bit weird. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's the elation followed by the deflation must be challenging. So we'll see how he gets on in Qatar. And something to keep an eye on in terms of a concept that, how often does that happen? Does it happen year on year? That's actually quite interesting, mate. Let's switch gears to LIV in the PGA Tour then. The irony of Wyndham Clark winning a 54-hole no-cut elevated event tournament while protecting legacy. Doesn't matter which side you fall on. I think it's been a very interesting week. One thing, I want to talk about LIV in particular in a minute, and obviously we're going to talk about the PGA Tour at AT&T, but I want to sort of preface this with, maybe for the first time ever, whether you like LIV, hate LIV, like the PGA Tour, hate the PGA Tour, like all golf, hate all golf, whatever, it doesn't really matter. This is the first weekend that I've genuinely seen the whole of golf talking about the PGA Tour and LIV in complete parity. There's been, and obviously the weather's played a huge part in that one, but it's felt like for the first time, as many quote-unquote column inches have been dedicated to LIV in a positive, even, worst case, neutral way, has been directed towards the PGA Tour. Again, is that are we rose tinting that, or how does that feel, Jay? Does that feel fair?
Yeah, I think that is fair. There's definitely been a shift. Ever really since the Rahm signing, I feel like there's been this sort of seismic shift in the ether where, people have been covering LIV a little bit differently. They've been talking about it differently. And the thing is, when you look at the leaderboard, and I posted this on Sunday, you have all these great champions at the top, number one, and number two, you have this global sort of reach to these players. You have players from the United States, South Africa, Australia, England, and then two players from Spain, and then someone from Chile. This is the whole vision of LIV actually playing out in real time. And I think that it was the finish was so exciting. It was so, you had this great champion like Sergio, who's won, 36 times worldwide. He's a Masters champion. And then you have someone who's younger on the come up, Joaquin Niemann, who I have said is like probably one of the best players 25 years old and under in the world. I think that he's the best young player out there. Like, these are the types of storylines that you need to continually build interest in professional golf. And this is something that's been totally glossed over and whitewashed on the PGA Tour, is that when you remove all these great champions from your events, and then you have guys coming up, it's like, in order for those younger guys to get like legitimacy and like prove themselves, they have to beat these older champions. And it just happens to be like pretty much all the older champions are over at LIV now. So I think that's a really important thing that I don't think people should necessarily gloss over. I think that it's something that's really, really important to to building golf up and sort of making it more interesting, is that you have to have these matchups. And then you have someone like John Rahm, who is breathing down their necks. Like, this is like really, really compelling stuff. Like, this is something I was actually reading right before we hopped on. Like, viewership is like up 50% on Mayakoba from last year, which is this huge, huge uptick. And part of that is they definitely got viewers that would have typically watched Pebble, but this is I thought it was a great event. Like, it was really one of those times. It was definitely a top 5 event so far. And you notice every now and then there are these times when I LIV sort of up levels, and this was one of those times because it totally captured the imagination of the golf world. And I saw people that have been very negative about it for 2 years kind of flip and basically saying and tweeting, "Wow, this is really cool."
Yeah, I spotted a lot of that myself, and I think there's a few elements to that as well. Just to unpick the up and comers versus the legacy, I think that's an interesting one. So Wacko versus Sergio was a big deal. I think for the first time ever, for me, there was, I keep using this word now, but there was parity between the field strength. I genuinely don't think there has been. We can say there's that many major champions on LIV. That's fine. It's cool to say, but a lot of them are legacy major champions. And yeah, well, obviously the young up and comers have got to beat those guys and passing of the torch. But for the first time, when I personally looked at both fields, and some friends of mine that have been, on the fence when it comes to LIV, for the first time, there has been no denying that the modernity of the field and the mixture of legacy within the field felt reasonably similar. And I think the addition of Rahm and Hatton has, I honestly think in 10 years' time, whatever LIV becomes, that will be the single biggest pivotal moment, because it was that has transformed the brand for me. And they did a few things around it for me. They did a few things around the broadcast. I thought the broadcast was far better than last year. Still a little sketchy in places. The pylon was a little bit out of order against the commentary, and like whoever's placing the microphones, sometimes the music's loud, sometimes it's soft, and I can hear the cup rattle when the ball goes in. Like little details that it's all just through practice.
That is not hearing the cup. That is an imported noise. And the two things that I've said that LIV need to do is they need to get rid of that look, we know I like LIV. It's not a surprise.
Sounds rubbish.
But that imported noise when the ball goes in the cup needs to disappear. It's got to go.
It's funny. I like it. I didn't think it was imported though. I thought they actually had microphones in the cup.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was legit.
I can tell you it's imported because twice during the broadcast, you heard the noise randomly as they're walking down the fairway, and it is the exact same noise.
Because I wondered if they got some of the channels mixed up, because you heard it a few times where a few mic channels are being left on, and there was like someone's cell phone went off, and it was a bit like Trigger Happy TV here in the UK. It was the old Nokia ringtone jam, and it was there's a few little details like that. But again, it's still fairly new. I think the quality of everything was significantly higher. Let's talk about that field strength, because we had obviously. Let's think about it this way, okay? It felt like there was a lot of parity between the PGA Tour this week in terms of field, regardless of the results, and LIV. All right, that's the first thing to note. But then if you look at some of the stories that came out of it, all right, we had Wyndham Clark, who won with a 60, 54 holes. But he then had, let's just say the next two, Oberg and Pavon. Pavon won last week, and Oberg's breathing down his neck. Frankly, I think he would have pipped him because he was on a bit of a tear. And then you had Jakob, you had Sergio, but the big stories were people like Surratt, Vincent. They all had pretty strong debuts. A lot of the argument has been that the players just aren't there, and I just feel like that has probably changed. How important, Jay, I think this would be an interesting one for you, those storylines around like people like Caleb Surratt, okay? He four-putted, and instead of going to pieces like I would, he absolutely blitzed it, all right? How important is that when you have similar stories like Dunlap and Oberg on the PGA Tour? The argument of strength of upcoming talent, again, that doesn't necessarily seem to be there anymore. Again, there's a bit of parity.
Yeah, it's true. I think the diversity of talent is something at LIV that they've really done a good job of up-leveling from last season to this season. I think the depth of field, we always talk about raising the floor of LIV, and I think it was an addition by subtraction in some ways too. Like some of the guys like Siwon Kim, unfortunately, I hate picking on him, but it is what it is. And then people like, Chase Koepka, those are like two of the punching bags of LIV last year. And this year, like, you don't really, like, if you look at the field, like, you don't really have that anymore. Like, you have guys that are younger, but they're proven sort of talented commodities like Surratt. Like, I think that's something it's going to go totally gloss over. But when you totally screw up and have a four putt, when you're having a pretty good round, typically it's going to go south after that. He rebounded immediately and made 5 straight birdies. Like, that's something that like people need to like really file away. Like, oh wow, this is like really, really impressive. And then when you start looking through the field, like there's not a lot of weaknesses anymore. Like, I think that the relegation this season is going to be really interesting to sort of see who's at the very, very bottom, because that's going to tell you a lot about sort of where LIV is going. And like we mentioned last week, a lot of these sort of captains and sort of higher level players, like their contracts are going to be up this year and next year. So you start falling down in the relegation, all of a sudden you might not have a spot on LIV in very, very short order. So I definitely think that the depth is there. I think that if people are always going to nitpick like certain players, and trust me, I could go to the PGA Tour leaderboard and talk about like all these people that no one's heard of. I know it because I'm a golf sicko. Most people are not going to know those names. The LIV model, you get to know these players because there's less players and you get to know them week to week, so that by the end of the season, you may not have known who Caleb Surratt was prior to 2 weeks ago. Moving forward, you're going to know who he is because you're going to have a whole season. He's going to play in every single event against these great champions from the past or the sort of current. He's on a team with John Rahm. He's on a team with Tyrrell Hatton. And I think that that's something that's really interesting, and it's something that people really need to keep an eye on as time goes on. A lot of these guys you don't know now. The end of the season, if you're following LIV very, very closely, you're going to know exactly who they are, by the end of the season.
I think Caleb Surratt is. You look at it. He was 7th. I just lost it. Surratt, where is he? He was 8th in greens in reg. And that is just, and 7th in fairways hit. For a boy who they kept saying was repacking his dorm, to be 7th in fairways hit and 8th in greens and regulation is phenomenal. And especially when you consider he had a 4-putt to just go birdie, 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 and have that discipline and that control. Because you miss a couple of those fairways and a couple of those greens, and you go from 7th and 8th down to sort of 15th and 20th, and you're middle of the pack. But Like the strength of field for me is fantastic, and I look at the, if I get the big one of my big screen on the phone, and I look at that. I just look down that list, and again, these comparing it to the PGA Tour, fantastic. The PGA Tour had a fantastic card as well. You look at Clark, Aberg, Scheffler, Thomas, Day, Burns, Rose, Cantlay, Keegan Bradley, Morikawa in their top 14, and they're all big names. Neiman, Garcia, Rahm, Burmeister, Johnson, Koepka, Hatton, Oosthuizen, Cam Smith, Paul Casey, Taylor Gooch. Like, it's just those that you could put that one, you could put 114 against the other 14. It'd be a fantastic event where you'd probably have to do a coin flip, and that's testament to the characters and the players they brought on. And I think that what for me is so encouraging is that there are so many people saying positive things this time about LIV that they weren't before, and it does feel like a lot of the maybe the fence sitters have gone, do you know what? It isn't as bad as people made out. And I said the one thing that did make me laugh was it's gone from being, oh, it's a tour of has-beens, which it never was. It's a tour of has-beens, to going, they're now moaning about the music and the team names. And I get team names are always funny, but like who would have thought the Miami Dolphins when it first came out was a great team name? Like the LA Lakers, find me a lake in LA. They weren't based there originally. Do you know what I mean? Like they want Red Sox, White Sox. It's all moved around. Names don't necessarily work straight away. I think that is something that will come with time and recognition and just repetition of it being in existence. But look, the PGA Tour had a great level of player. The LIV had a fantastic level of player on display. And I think I know people say, I want them all to play together. Well, part of me doesn't. I like them playing apart. And I like the fact that the majors are going to be where hopefully they all come together. And if any point ever gets done, a PGA Tour versus a LIV Tour competition, a Ryder Cup style event, I don't mind a little bit of people being on one side and the other. Let's get them together and let's let them compete against each other 4 or 5 times a year. They don't have to compete together week in, week out.
That's such a it's a huge thing. Just to sort of jump in, Jay. It's wild, isn't it, with the majors? Because the comment from Yako at the end, where a lot of people have almost said it as if it was flippant. The first thing he said on the interview was, congratulations. He said, yeah, but I'm not in the majors, and it sounded flippant and it looked flippant when you see it in black and white on Twitter or whatever. When you see the guy, like, he's upset. I know he's in the Open because he won the Australian, but he's upset by it, and it
wasn't flippancy, was it? It wasn't. It was upset and anger.
Yeah, it was his first reaction, and I get it. And it just feels like if the cards are played right, like you just alluded to, Ben, the majors are the clear winners out of all this if the cards are just played right. And because all the ratings go up, everything just raises if the majors are the only places that these guys are playing together. And it just seems wild, Jay, that we can't seem to get to that,
Yeah, unfortunately, and this is something that I'm going to keep complaining about until it's fixed. I don't know. I don't have any confidence that the majors are going to fix this. Like, I don't have any. I know David Feherty basically guaranteed that Waka was going to get an invite to the Masters. I don't see it that way at all. I think that the sort of golf establishment wants to punish these guys. And I think that 2024 might be their sort of last opportunity to do that. I think that they want to punish some of the players that are not in the Masters, so they're not going to extend any special invites. I hope that I'm proven wrong. I really do. Like, it will restore some of my faith in Augusta National if they do, because if they don't invite Joaquin Niemann, who's literally the only reason why he's not in the Masters is because of politics. Like, it goes against literally everything that they stand for. They created the Latin America Amateur Championship specifically for guys like Joaquin Niemann to get recognition and get in the Masters. He won it in 2018. Like, it wasn't like that long ago, and he was playing in the Masters. He played in it last year and he played well. He finished 16th. And it wasn't that long ago that if you finished 16th in the Masters, you were automatically invited back next year. So there's a lot of reasons why they could say, oh yeah, let's just I'll bring him in. I think that the whole golf establishment is very petty. I think that they're very upset about how things have gone with LIV. I don't think they like being back into a corner like this. And I think they're going to resist. I don't think he's going to get invited. I think it's going to be a travesty. I think that it's going to go against everything they stand for. And I think that Augusta National is going to get exposed if they don't invite Joaquin Niemann, because he's this great global superstar in golf. Like, I think that he's he's that good. Like, I know talent when I see it. Joaquin Neiman is like one of the most talented players that like I've ever seen. So, and for him to not get in the majors, like, I still think he's obviously in the Open. He's so good. Like, I'm pretty sure he's going to wind up qualifying for the U.S. Open too. And I think his ranking should be maintained so that the PGA Championship, he should still be in the top 100. I think it might be a little bit dicey, but so I think he'll be in 3 of them. But the Masters is a closed invite, unfortunately. The only way he's going to get in, because he's not going to have enough world ranking points to get in the top 50. For a variety of reasons. And it's really frustrating to me, because the majors are supposed to be where the best players are all coming together. And if you start getting to the point where you don't have all the best players, people are going to start questioning, like, oh man, like, you're missing like all these guys. Like, you're missing 1 now, maybe next year you're missing 5, maybe the year after that you're missing 10, 15. Like, all of a sudden you start getting to the point where it's like, wait a minute, like, is this really a major? And that seems crazy right now. I get it. The Masters is like one of the top, golf tournaments. It's probably the top golf tournament in the world. Everybody watches it. It's the highest rated one. I get it. Looking into the future, though, part of the reason why it is what it is because it's always had the best field. And if it starts getting to the point where, like in 2 years, Bryson DeChambeau is not automatically qualified for the Masters. So, and there's a lot of other guys at LIV that are like that too. Bryson's probably going to have to win this year to make sure he gets in forever. But that's the thing that's really frustrating to me. I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that we get some sort of resolution to get these guys access to the major so that we don't have to haggle over this. Except I think for 2024, they're going to do everything that they can to keep Waco out.
We shall see on that one. Not too long to wait before April rolls around, and we should get a little bit of news before then. Now, in just a bit, we are going to talk a little bit about Wyndham 60 and Jako's 59. We're going to dive deep on those two. Plus, I think there was a bit of a pivotal broadcast moment for LIV that got some people interested. But before we do that, remember, you can get over to glugc.com/support and join our fan zone anytime. You're going to get some early access to meetups. You're going to get some early access to content as we roll more and more out. But also, you get to get involved and say that you are a part, indeed, of Golf Lovers United. Now, Ben, you got some thoughts. Wyndham Clark has shot a historic 60 over at Pebble Beach. But you asterisked, mate. What's going on? What's the asterisk?
Again, what I found, and this is what a couple of people that I get on with, I'm quite civil with in the golf media, that are not, they're very anti-LIV, have said things like, why can't you just say well done? Now, my point is, I did say well done. It was an incredible round. Shoot 60 is unbelievable. But those same people were the very first people that when Bryson got his 58 went, it was lift, clean and place. That 58 doesn't count. It was lift, clean and place. It was lift, clean and place. Bryson's 58 doesn't count. And when you dare to say the same, is a valid point. Look, Bryson's 58 was world class, like unbelievable. What an amazing round. It was lift, clean and place. The 58 still stands because he shot 58. Wyndham 60 still stands because he shot 60. The point I'm making is, if you're going to apply the lift, clean and place attack to one person, and attack's the wrong word, critique, you should be able to apply it the other way. Now, Wyndham's 60 was undoubtedly one of the best rounds that's ever been shot, best score for sure, and one of the best rounds that's ever been shot at Pebble Beach. You can't take that away from him. It was world class. And I watched, I was about to say something snarky. I said I watched about 12 shots because of adverts, but the adverts are a problem. But hey, I'm not moaning about that. Wyndham's round was fantastic. I watched about 12 shots of it, and the guy was flushing it. Absolutely superb. But we've all played golf when it's lift, clean, and place. And even if you don't improve your lie through the lift, clean, and place, mentally, you feel like you've got a better place. You feel like your ball's in a slightly better position. And golf is up here. We know that. My point isn't that it's not a great round, and it's not that it isn't the best shot score ever at Pebble Beach, which it is. My point is, should we be saying to ourselves, fairly, is a 60 with lift, clean, and place as true as 60 as a 60 playing it as it lies? That's all I'm saying. And I would never have said that if the comments hadn't been made about Bryson's 58. It was a bit defensive of me, for sure. But I feel like many of us have been riding into battle for some of these people at times because of the unfair criticism. And I think it's a perfect example of criticising it on one side and not levelling the same criticism, or being cross that criticism is being given away. That's all it is, Mark. And yeah, fantastic round, best score ever there. He flushed it round there. Would he have shot a 60 without lift, clean, and place? Quite possibly. Who knows? I tend to think lift, clean, and place is probably worth 1.5 to 2 strokes. Anecdotal, made up in my own mind, but I know that for me, if I get a chance to lift, clean, and place, I always joke, my favourite time of year is March the 28th to March the 30th, when the fairways have started to dry out a bit, but I still get a bit of lift, clean, and place under winter rules. So I get the best of both worlds. Or when it goes into October, and of course there's a strict October to end of March, lovely stuff. I've still got some firm fairways, and I can pick clean and place. And I said it as a joke. That's all I'm thinking. It's not that it wasn't a great round. It was one of the greatest rounds we've ever seen. It was superb. He deserves all the praise. But a 60 with lift, clean, and place isn't the same to me as a 60 without.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I think that the thing about some of these criticisms too, like all the criticisms of Bryson, sort of that came out after he shot 58, it was so disingenuous on a lot of levels, and that's part of the reason why some of us have sort of leaned into the fact that Wyndham Clark's 60 was lift, clean, and place. But I dove into the numbers a little bit on Twitter, some of the strokes gain numbers about Wyndham's 60, and people were trying to say, I think he even said something about, I'd rather shoot 60 at Pebble than 59 someplace else. He's obviously taking a shot at Joaquin Niemann. There's no question about it. And Wyndham Clark just needs to zip it about LIV, because there's a lot of information out there about why he wasn't playing at Mayakoba this week. We've already shared some of that information, so he needs to just stop. So, but Joaquin Niemann's 59 was basically almost 3 shots better strokes gained than Wyndham Clark's 60, just because the scoring average at Mayakoba was actually a little bit higher than it was at Pebble that particular day. The distribution was a little bit wider for Joaquin Niemann, which makes his 59, again, almost 3 shots more impressive than Wyndham Clark's 60. So because the Pebble scoring average of Pebble was ridiculously low, it was in the 60s. So that's something people need to sort of, if you are going to dive into the numbers a little bit more, and I was waiting for Data Golf to say something about it, but they never really did. But they were the first ones to sort of dive into and sort of try to discredit Bryson's 58. It's stuff like that just really grinds my gears, and I'm hopeful that we're sort of moving into this period of time where people are going to start treating these things more fairly. I still think that there's so much bad information out there, or just withholding information, or double standards and all these things, that we just have to continue to keep calling them out. It just is what it is until this is fixed. Maybe it'll never be fixed. Maybe it's always going to be some level of unfairness in terms of how these things are covered. But it's our job. It's something that I take seriously, and it's something that I want to make sure that I am sort of centering the conversation. Whenever it's going too far in one direction, I'm going to bring it back to sort of center. That's sort of one of the things that I've been doing from the beginning. And it's part of the reason why people think that I'm such a LIV shill, is because the conversation about LIV has been so negative over the last 2 years. Like, I've been trying to center the conversation the whole time. So it probably does seem like I have a LIV bias, and maybe I do, but it's like, you do have to treat these things more fairly, and that's what I'm all about. That's what this podcast is all about. And we're going to continue to keep calling out this unfairness and hypocrisy until it stops.
Let's talk about Jako's 59, which I watched the entire round on that. His putter was on, well, he was on fire throughout, from tee to green and on every single putting surface. But that could have easily been a 57. Missed 4-footer, 4 foot 4 inch on 17. Didn't play 18 fantastically. Short of the green, a little bit of a duffer. But he duffed it for a 59. I mean, holy crap, that's pretty solid stuff. Ben, that could have easily been a 57 though, man.
Am I the only person whose lower back hurts watching him in his impact position?
My lower back hurts all the time, mate. That's over 40 for you.
Surely I can't be the only person that watches him impact and goes, that's absolutely insane. How he get, like, it's just like, unbelievable. But look, fantastic round. He's a great striker of the ball, and I think one of the things that Wacker will say himself, he didn't have the greatest first half of the season last year on LIV. Like, things weren't quite gelling for him. Obviously, he was new in some ways with the team and getting his mates together in the way that it did and all that sort of stuff. And what other external pressures might be on a man? And we all know we all have different levels of form. But he's sort of taken that back half of the season on LIV and got better and better and better. Got into the DP World Tour in the LIV off season, played a few events there. We know he won the Aussie Open, and we know he came fourth in the other event, which Minwoo Lee won. And he just kept going and going and going. A fifth place in Dubai, and he's really trending. And the thing I get when I watch him is he doesn't seem to have any self-doubt at all. Now, I'm not saying the other 53 players have got loads of self-doubt, but you can sometimes see from what I like it to Rory McIlroy. When Rory McIlroy's got that swagger going, you know he's going to shoot a 65. You know what I mean? When Rory gets going, that strut goes, and Rory's, I joke, he bounces down the fairway like he's got springs in his shoes. But Niemann's almost got a slightly different. It's like a quicker to the ball like that, and I love it. And you can just see, and he gets there. He has long conversations with his caddy, and the relationship they've got is fantastic. And I thought his 59 was absolutely superb. It was a pleasure to watch and a joy to watch. But I am going to say something about golf and Neiman from day 2 and day 3. Not about the 2-shot penalty that happened. Not if you just look, and Greg Norman was in the booth for a little bit. And Greg Norman said something, and we've all been there. He said, today, because what did Neiman get on round 2? He was one over. And Greg Norman said, sometimes when you play golf, for some reason you can't explain, you're always between a club. And Greg Norman did a fantastic, he said, yesterday when he shot 12 under, he said, they got to the club, they got to the ball, what distance is it? 175, okay, that's my 8 iron. I'm picking a random club, but it was always his number. And he said, you go to round 2, and every time they got to the ball, every time you heard them speak, do I hit a 7, do I hit an 8? He was never, and golf is so funny that you can shoot a 12 under the day 1, and a day 2 you shoot a 1 over. And he didn't play bad golf day 2, but sometimes you're just in between clubs. And I've shot a couple of low single figures, which I know to Jay is nothing. He shot under par a few times. But a couple of times I shot low single figures, everything, I had a 4 over. Every time I got to a ball, it was 125 or 137, like which are the distances that I hit my gap wedge and I hit my pitching wedge. I mean, it was literally every single, and I thought about that. And I thought, I wonder if there's enough made of golf about sometimes just that ball's in the right place for you. Do we talk about that?
No, I don't think we talk about that nearly enough. Like that's something that is like that's the reason why great rounds turn into great rounds is because everything kind of goes your way. It and look, like I said, Joaquin Niemann is one of the top 5 to 10 most talented players in the world. He literally has no weaknesses in his game. Like I have been watching him for a long time. A lot of guys, I tend to sort of find something that's like a little bit of a weakness, and I want to sort of talk about that. The one weakness that I thought that maybe he had was like the mental toughness. Like I wasn't exactly sure sort of where he was there, but like to get that 2-stroke penalty right before the third round that turned his 70 into a 72. And then to bounce back and still wind up winning the event. That's something that's going to go totally glossed over, but it's like a lesser player would have like taken that and like it was going south a little bit in the final round. Like a lesser player would have probably shot 75 and lost. He wound up keeping it under par. He kept it together. Granted, it wasn't as good as his first round, like very few rounds are, but I think he was able to sort of keep his level. He drove it great. His iron game is always solid. Short game good. Putting was great. He was able to save some really good pars. He's a player that has no weaknesses. So like, I think part of the reason why he made such a big deal about the majors in the post round is because he knows that he can win not one, but he can win multiple majors. There's no question about it in my mind. And it just takes him getting in. And he's playing so well now that they better keep him out of the Masters because he could easily go there and win. So because he's got the game to certainly do it. So, and he's been trending at Augusta National the last 3 years. He's been progressively getting better and figuring out that course. And he's still so young. He's only 25. So it's like he has his whole career ahead of him. I think that he's, as long as he finds a way to get in these majors, he's going to win one, I think, in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't think there's any question to me about that. And he showed his mental fortitude. And it's something that there's other younger players that I'm not quite sure if they have it. One of those players is Ludwig. I'm not sure if he has that mental fortitude just yet. He hasn't proven it in majors yet. He hasn't even played in a major yet. And the one time he was in a big event, he was in the lead in the third round. He totally blew up in the final round. So at the BMW PGA last year. So it's just something that people need to keep an eye on as things continue to unfold this season. It's something that I want people to just like plant that seed so that when it does, things start going a certain way, you're more equipped to say, oh, this is something we had talked about early in the year. And it's something that I think is going to play itself out a certain way. I'm excited to see how the season plays out. I think it's going to be really interesting. So we'll have to see.
I disagree massively on Ludwig Aberg. I think that everyone has a bit of a blow up. I don't think that necessarily means you're mentally fragile or mentally weak. I would say one of the things I think that really helps Aberg, and when I think that mentally it's a good thing, he could be very strong. I mean, what we are yet to see is that if you're a natural flusher of the ball and you're not a forcer of the ball, that really helps mentally. If you haven't got to try and force gaps and force this and force that and just a natural flusher, I think that really helps. So I think you're being a bit harsh on Aberg there. But we don't always have to agree, do we?
Not at all.
You guys
disagreement's part
playing
of it.
nicely. I'm going to get this on Twitter. You guys like nothing more on Twitter than going, look back at this tweet from 12 years ago when I said Twitter is amazing. And now look at it. It's amazing. I was right. You guys are
To
wild.
be clear, I did pick Joaquin Niemann to win this event. So I didn't want to pat myself on the back here, but I picked him to win Michael and he did win. So let's not gloss over that.
You can have that one. I'll give you that, my friend. I do want to get to the picks in a minute. We are going to wrap up in a second because I think you're absolutely right. You did pick that, mate, and you deserve that one. The picks for last time I want to get to. I want to skim over them and just revisit them, but also let's get our picks for this weekend as well. But one thing just to finish up on, I think we'll live in Mayakoba, which I think has probably begun to change the tune a little bit. We talk about brand quite a lot of LIV, and it's had a lot of work to do on brand. I think LIV accidentally got something that it desperately needed this weekend. I think every thing, whether it's a media outlet, whether it's a golf tour, whether it's a startup, whether it's a band, whether it is a movie, needs an iconic shot. And I think LIV Golf finally got its iconic shot this week, because the TV shot from above showing the huge monitor lighting up the green as they played in darkness, coupled with Sergio saying, come on, let's go and just get it done. That they desperately needed that iconic shot, and I think they managed to get it. So, yeah, huge props on that one. I thought it looked fantastic. Now, let's get some picks. Ben, very quick recap. I wasn't around. I had tonsillitis. Who did you guys and Achille have for Mayakoba? Let's zip through those.
The only way to make this work, right, is that we'll do our picks over the season. Whoever gets the lowest score wins. Because obviously, if you pick Bryson, which Jay did, and he finished 25th for his third place, that's 25. So what we'll do is you have 3 picks, and whoever's got the lowest score of the season, and Mark, standing in for you last week was Achille, and he's done you some favours. You're off to a flyer. So both Achille and Jay picked Neiman to win. Achille had Cam Smith and DJ finished 8th and 5th respectively. Then Jay, despite picking the winner, is in last place because he picked P. Reed, who came 17th, and Bryson, who came 25th. And while I didn't get a winner, I had Burmeister at 4th, Abe at 20th, and John Rahm at 3rd. My fireball pick came 6th. Achilles' Range Goats came 11th. And the Crushers came in 2nd. With the teams, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double that up, because it's the difference of having a single versus a team. So that's how we'll do it. I'll track it over the year. No one will be interested apart from me and maybe 10 other people who listen to this, but I will keep a record of it. So what I need off you, gentlemen, I need your 3 singles players. You can say who you think is going to finish first, but the 3 singles players is what's going to count for your score, and your team, who you think your team will be. So let's fly through them. If you want me to go first, I'm happy to go through them first. But we've got a rule, Mark, to keep Jay on time. You are only allowed to give a 30-second explanation behind a player. That is the rule, because you know what Jay's like. He could give you an hour on why Paul Casey, who he won the Pro-Am with, is going to finish 2nd. So if you want my picks, I'll go first.
I'm going to take that as a challenge. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to keep this all under 30 seconds. And also, I kind of think that we should only pick winners instead of the top 3, but that's an.
All right, let's pick top 2. Top 2 then. Just do 2.
Top 2.
Do 2.
Okay. All right, top 2. I'm going Brooks to win. I think Vegas is his spot. He loves Vegas. This course suits him. I think he's going to play well. And number 2, I'm going to go DJ. I think that he is playing pretty well right now. And then for my team, I got to go with the 4 Aces. I think the 4 Aces played really poorly in Mayakoba. They will be the first to admit that. They are going to bounce back. They're going to bounce back in a huge way. They're going to win LIV Golf Las Vegas.
Mark?
I'm going to go with Rambo, because I think he's got a point to prove from last week. I think he desperately wanted that first week win. I think he wanted to, like they kept saying on the broadcast, the new sheriff in town. So I think Rambo's got a big point to prove. And he played well. So he's coming off that team win as well. I think Bryson's probably trending as well. He seemed to feel pretty good last week. And for the team, I mean, it just feels cliche now. We're only 2 weeks in, but it feels cliche to say Legion 13, but they looked that strong this week because of that fourth player counting. It just looked really strong. So they're my picks, my friend.
Okay, I'll allow it this week, but from now on, after this week, you can only pick 1 captain. That's got to be fair. Otherwise, you'll end up picking the same 7 or 8 players the whole time. That fair? Because if we were going to pick 1 captain and 1 other, my other would have been a different player than I'm going to pick. There is no way for me I'm not going to pick Brooks. Las Vegas Golf and Country Club is an old school golf club, very tight, but still got length. So it's going to reward being tight and accurate and into greens. Brooks has to be my pick for that. Brooks absolutely has to be my pick for it. Now, I'm torn between Sergio Garcia going for another great round, flushed his irons all day, was a little bit wayward at times off the tee. So I'm going to go for John Rahm. And I don't want to go for John Rahm because I wanted to go for Tyrrell Hatton, but because I thought we were going to do 1 captain and 1 non-captain, but you two have got me for that. So you've gone Legion 13. I was torn between Legion 13 and between Ripper. I think the Ripper were trending really, really well at the end. I have some concerns maybe about Surratt and Vincent for their first time, not in as players, with a big crowd. They can have a massive crowd, really tight to people. I don't know how they're going to respond to that. So I think that the Ripper GC are going to be better in that environment. But I can't overlook the Stingers. I've got to go Stingers. I'm going for the Stingers as my team. I'm going for the Stingers. They love a bit of tee to green. Right, that's that dealt with. We've done the teams. I will work out the scoring. From next week on, gentlemen, it is one captain and one non-captain.
That's fair.
I think I can smell a spreadsheet coming. That sounds very much like something Ben might get on with. Anyone watching the YouTube version of this, you'll see how delighted he looks. Hey, listen, thank you for joining us for episode 22 of Golf Lovers United. What a fascinating time it has been over the last week and will continue to be into next week, of course, with, well, LIV Golf Las Vegas, which has built its own party hall to compete with the PGA Tour over in Phoenix at the Waste Management. So we will see what comes. We will be back next week with more of the same. If you enjoyed this, let us know over on Twitter at GLU Golf Club. You can listen at glugc.com. You can watch us over on YouTube, or you can tell your friends they can tune in their podcast app of choice. And if you want to get involved in the fan zone, just like our good friend Tony Gentile, once again, happy birthday, Tony. You can do so at glugc.com/support. Ben, we'll see you next week, sir.
Thank you very much. And I am probably 4 to 5 hours away from having completed the putting together our first event in the UK. So I'll have all the information on that. And I'm trying to make the date work for when Jay's going to be in the UK and Achille from Drunk by the Turn so they can join us on our golf day.
Get yourself a spreadsheet. That'll sort it out, and it will be a great day. And if you do turn up at the event, you can bring your own spreadsheet, so look out for that one. Now, it will be exciting, and you will get to know about that first if you are a FanZone member, glugc.com/support. And Jay, always good to see you, mate. Love your 4 aces hat. Commiserations on not winning the team event this week.
Yeah, it was a tough week for us. However, like I said, we're going to bounce back. I can't believe we're already 22 episodes into the Golf Lovers United. By the way, this is really impressive. Last I checked, we've now done more than I did with the other guy, who will remain nameless. I think that things have been going really, really well for us. We've got a great team. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to another 22 episodes.
I love it. And as a data guy, I'll tell you this, my friend. We are trending very, very well in terms of downloads, in particular over on YouTube. We are doing really, really well in terms of what does an average podcast get. We are in a very strong position, and most podcasts only make it to episode 7. So we've tripled that record, and we'll be back for more next week. So until then, thank you, the ever-present listener. Thank you to all that get involved over on Twitter at GLU Golf Club. So until next time, enjoy your golf. Whether you're playing, whether you're watching, enjoy yourself, look after yourself, and we'll see you next week.